You good, go. Good afternoon and welcome to this multi-location meeting of the Democratic Services Committee on Monday, the 21st of July. I am Councillor Neath John and I'm the Vice Chair of this committee. I've received apologies from Councillor Joe Hale, Councillor Andy Lodwig, Councillor Phil Rogers and Saifur Rahman. Before we move on to the first agenda item, please can we note that today's meeting will be recorded. Please ensure that your phones are switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. When asked to raise your hand, if members who are virtually viewing this meeting, could you raise your electronic hand? And for members in the presentation room, just raise your regular hand. I wish to remind members signing in remotely of their legal obligation to have their camera switched on during the meeting in order to be seen and heard whilst participating in council business. We're not due a fire drill, so should the alarm sound during the meeting, please make your way to the nearest exit. And for the purposes of the recording, I'll hand over to our Democratic Service Officer to confirm attendance in the meeting room.
Good afternoon, members. Just for you to know that in the meeting room today, we have Councillors Reynolds, Goldup-John and Wolford, and officers Craig Griffiths, Stacey Curran, myself and Matthew Tucker. I'll hand back to the Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Now I'll move on with the agenda. So the first agenda item, declarations of interest. If there are any members that have any declarations in relation to the reports on today's agenda, can you please indicate now?
I see no declarations, Chair.
Thank you, Pam. So moving on to the second agenda item, the meeting minutes of the previous meeting. You'll see the minutes attached to pages 3 and 7 of your agenda pack. If you feel like these are an accurate record of the meeting, can I please have a proposer and a seconder to approve these minutes? If members do not indicate the contrary, then I will take these minutes as approved. Happy to propose, Sonia? Yeah. Am I allowed to propose a second? No.
Yeah.
Oh, I happily second then.
There we are. So changing.
Yeah, sorry.
So if members do not indicate to the contrary, then we'll take it that those minutes are approved. Those minutes are approved, Chair.
Brilliant. Agenda item 3, the annual member training programme 2025 to 2026. This report is here for decision and is on pages 9 to 19 of the agenda pack. Do members have any questions for the officers? You do, Councillor Wolford.
Yeah, thanks. I looked at the programme. I remember speaking to yourself last year, Craig, regarding quality of statement taken when we were in the appeals panel. Mm-hmm. Are we addressing that with members as well, that they may need to understand and be able to write the statement?
We are planning at the moment as well. There is some work that is ongoing with the Council's modernisation group at the moment, where we're looking at the future operation of the appeals committee in general, and subject to any decisions, ultimately they're going to be taken at full council. There may be some changes in the way that is going to be constructed, and that will be subject to some future reports going forward. We hadn't initially factored any sort of member involvement into that process just yet, because if the way that we could be going is it could be changing the nature of what the appeals committee is actually going to be looking at, and we may not actually have members involved in staff appeals anymore, subject to some ongoing discussions that will be had. But if it's the case we are going to retain, then yes, we can certainly look at trying to reinstate those elements back in. But it's one of those matters that's kept under review constantly in the way in which we need to work, because what you actually see in that member training in document is that just sort of bespoke elements that go on a sort of an annual basis, sort of various different matters, the codes of conduct and the various statutory training. But members do have a much more wider network ultimately, as we see as part of the member seminar programme and other aspects as well. But we can certainly look at factoring it in, subject to the outcomes of what we determine on the appeals process.
Okay, that's great. Hopefully just keep us up to date on that.
Absolutely. As I said, whatever the decision of the modernisation group ultimately end up recommending to council will be subject to full council consideration. So members will be fully affected on what happens.
Okay, thank you.
You satisfied with that?
Yeah, that's good.
Brilliant. Sonia?
I don't see, I mean, it's the general training programme. I don't see any particular reference to more in-depth finance training.
That will be coming separately, Councillor Reynolds, in that sense. So we passed that request on to Hugh Jones, our Section 151 officer, about the way members would like to approach that through the scrutiny process. So those will be separate elements that will be arranged by Hugh as part of the overarching training programme for members. This is just some of the corporate elements that we need to look to.
Thank you.
I may as well, Chair. The only additional thing I'd like to draw members' attention to is in order to be legally compliant with several imposed duties, there are mandatory training elements now for staff and elected members, which is a bit of a difference for staff and members. So the topics can be found on page 10 of your pack, but it's things like counter-terrorism, safeguarding, etc. The mandatory units can be undertaken online at members' leisure, and there will be a welcome and sort of how to use this online training platform called Thinky. The staff have had it as well, so it's a new online training platform that members are also able to make use of for their own learning and development, as well as the mandatory training units. We will make arrangements for the training sessions to be taken online and face-to-face should members prefer those sessions. But when you see a mandatory element, that's what it is. We've got now some legal duties that we have to make sure all of us are compliant with. So that's a little bit of a difference. There is a programme around how we're going to roll that out to members. So just appreciate Democratic Services support to that, I suppose. Just to, if you have any questions around it, that's the background and the difference. But we will try and take you through it step by step.
Perfect.
And also the lay members and the cabinet members will have a slightly different training programme running alongside, because they've responded to their survey slightly differently to what other members have. So they've got a slightly different programme running alongside, as well as committee specific training that will happen on top of this as well. And as Craig said, this is quite a fluid, open document. It's a baseline really to start with, and we'd welcome any feedback from officers and committee and members all the way through the year. So it's a fluid baseline document, I would say, to committee as a start point, and we just welcome members' feedback on it at this time.
Thank you, Stacey, for that. Yeah, you read my mind actually, because I made a note to myself that maybe there might be a seminar on the new Thinky.
There is.
Exactly.
Yes.
Would you know when that is?
It's based for September. We'll ensure that we do a couple, and what we'll do as well is we'll record it and we'll upload it as a sort of toolkit you can go back and watch, like a how-to video sort of thing. So we'll make sure that's available to go back on as well.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Thanks. Has anyone else got any other questions on this agenda item? Sonia?
Can I ask if the chair training, the training for chairs, is that going to be for all councillors or for just the chairs? And can it be about, can it include, because chairing scrutiny is a particular skill. We, in our group, for example, we elect chairs, so it can be anybody in the group and it can change year on year. So, it would be good to have people more generally involved in training scrutiny, in chairing scrutiny.
Yeah, well, that's a really good point, isn't it, actually? Yes. So the chairs of scrutiny have specific scrutiny chairing training, and then the other chairs have specific training. Planning has its own set of mandatory training, as does licensing. That's a really good point, to open it up to prospective chairs, isn't it? So that's really good feedback. We can take that on board.
And what we'll also be doing, and I think our first session is due to take place next week, we have a member seminar next Thursday on scrutiny procedure rules, which will explain obviously a lot of the procedural elements in respect of scrutiny. And at September's full council, we'll be agreeing some revisions to our council procedure rules, which have our various debating principles. There'll be a member seminar on that then in the autumn at the same time as well, just to make sure all those procedural elements are covered in the same way.
Thank you.
Very much. Right then, we'll go to the recommendation listed on page 11 of the agenda pack. Oh,
So Caroline,
Caroline, sorry, I missed your hand there. You want to come in?
That's okay, it was a bit late. I just wanted to agree with Sonia. I think that's great. And if there was training for all councillors on chairing meetings or any type of training really, because it would help, a group's provision map for the future, because you can't maybe choose who you'd want to go forward in a role if they have another relevant training to do it. So that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. I'll ask if anyone else has any more questions before I go to the recommendation. Lovely, jubbly. Right, so can I have a proposer and a seconder, please?
I'll propose, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wilford. Thank you, Sonia. Can members indicate if they wish to abstain?
I can see no abstentions, Chair.
Brilliant. Members, if you do not indicate to the contrary, then I will take it that this recommendation is approved.
Chair, I can see no indications to the contrary, so this recommendation is approved.
Brilliant, thank you very much. On to item 4. This report is here for decision and is on pages 21 to 32 of the agenda pack. The members have any questions for officers? I believe Councillor Wolford, you have a question.
I do indeed. There are several places within the action plan where it says develop local support, make contact with the police through local PCS. In my last meeting with Inspector Ryan Davis, you know, he let us know that when he started there were 38 PCSOs, now there's 18. And it's going to drop to 17 because I know my PCSO is going to increase. So there's a lot less opportunity to engage with PCSOs. It does say another part about having a single point of contact. So are we going to set up through the public protection kind of department? We have a representative in the police station, a single point of contact for members to be able to just contact the police.
That is exactly what we're looking for at the moment. So the point about the PCSO is obviously when we first made the approach ultimately to South Wales Police previously, the response was, well, you can go through your PCSOs, they would be the best people ultimately in which to go with. The counter argument which we've been given is sometimes the issue of harassment and intimidation, etc., sometimes goes beyond the remit of what a PCSO ultimately is going to be looking at. So we've asked the police if they can give us a named contact or a few individuals ultimately within their team who we could use then for members to contact in respect of those particular scenarios. So the contact we've been having is liaising by our community safety team in the police unit down in Wellington. So we're in the process now of trying to identify who those names ultimately may be. The plan then is when we produce to you the toolkit, which has all of that information, you have those contact details ultimately in there as well. So that dialogue with the police is ongoing to have that dedicated set of people you can go to. So whether it's just notification to an inspector, a sergeant, whatever the case ultimately be, there'll be someone specific, and it's not just going to be reliance on the PCSOs themselves.
That's great. Thank you.
For me to put that in place.
Agree with that?
Yeah, great.
Sonia?
I'd just like to agree with that because I've recently got myself into a difficult situation in a neighbour dispute because my PCSO was unable, we were unable to agree a time when we could both go to meet a fairly aggressive participant in that dispute to try and mediate. And I've had a rap on the knuckles as a result of a complaint arising out of that because I ended up going on my own. And it was almost impossible to organise that around his limited hours that he was available in the area. It's about being able to call up and have someone who can deal with that within days. And I know, twice now I've had issues where I've needed to do that. So it would be good to have that contact and be able to know that you could call on support.
Yeah,
Thanks, Sonia.
I do think that those issues aren't going to get better.
No.
They're only going to get worse because more PCSOs are leaving and they're not being replaced. So there's going to be a huge void very, very soon.
Okay.
There's also a programme of work, if I can just add, that our standards committee have actually been looking at recently. So they've been looking at how the intimidation and harassment issues can link into the member code of conduct issues at the same time, recognising the two will often dovetail. So we're going to be looking at some internal processes as well there, where there will be things like a log being recorded ultimately within democratic services. So we've got accurate records of it. So if, for example, a member has had a form of intimidation or harassment ultimately online and they want to just record the fact that they've had it, save them having to keep their own records on it, we'll be able to have a little bit of a portal so then we can trace then if there are any specific examples coming out of intimidation and harassment, if there are any recurring patterns maybe that we need to do a little bit of insight on. So we're going to be asking members to actively notify us when these issues happen. So we'll create a little bit of a Teams link or an office link where somebody can come in and they just fill a quick online form in, which will record it, and we'll be able to keep a record then at the same time. So there's going to be different ways of trying to capture some of that information as well. So we've got evidence ultimately to work out what we can be doing as a committee to try and support. So we will be slightly updating this action plan when standards committee have considered it next week as well.
Yeah, I think that's really beneficial, actually, that office link to record that, because sometimes members might not actually want to go to the police and say, oh, this is an issue I've come across, but just banking that harassment or constant abuse online. I think that's definitely a welcome approach. Just a question from me, stemming off Councillor Wilford's question. With the dialogue you've got with the police at the moment, have we got a time frame and as to when we're going to get that single point of contact or that group contact?
We're just in ongoing discussions with Eleanor Wellington, so we do have it named, and she's following through this action plan with us, and Pamela's been discussing with her. So imminent, I would say. We're just trying to tie up the pieces together. If the committee are minded to approve this action plan today, now we can take those actions forward as agreed, Chair, and then we'll be able to really solidify the contact, and then we'll send out all the information to members. So continuous and imminent. As best I can say.
What we are hoping, Chair, is that we'll be able to get the toolkit out, in the early part of the autumn. So that should have all those details ultimately in there at that point. So a final copy of the toolkit will be brought to this meeting just for official sign off, which should have those details in there, hopefully.
Okay, great. And then just coming on to the point that Councillor Wilford made as well about the significant reduction of PCSOs. Obviously, in this action plan, that is the point of contact, and I can understand and appreciate that we're addressing that, and we're trying to get an alternative in place, but that's still quite a significant impact for the wider public, and that's part of our job, isn't it, interacting with them. So is there something we can do as a committee just to highlight this, because that is a bit of a concern when it comes to not just member safety but community safety? Is there a role that democratic services can play there to kind of highlight this as an issue?
I mean, what we could recommend then ultimately is to continue that discussion and to help with it. We could do a letter from the chair, ultimately encouraging them to try and get that request ultimately for the name as well. We could also link into our social services scrutiny committee, and they have the community safety function that sits under them. So we can actually have a quick discussion with the chair of that committee and ask her to maybe consider it as part of the forward work programmes within that committee at the same time as well. So we can certainly look to cross-refer.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Lewis, please.
Talking about the PCSO, I've got quite a good relationship with my PCSO, and I meet with him regularly, but I met with Emma Wools recently within our local primary school, and we explained the concerns we had with the decline in numbers of PCSOs. I attended, maybe this isn't quite relevant to this, but we attended an in-person seminar recently with the community safety team in Talbot, and it was really poorly attended, and it probably cost a decent amount of money to put on time. Is it possible, the PCSO, although I have a good relationship and he does get back to me quite, within a week, is there any way we have meetings with the inspector? I got a link to my PCSO. The community safety team, couldn't we arrange a quarterly Teams call with them rather than seminars to address any sort of concerns or anything? I think quarterly is within reason. Just for us to have a bit of a say, whether it's, you link certain wards together. But, I think that might be helpful then for them to understand where we are as councillors and wards, and also for them to support us, because they seem to have quite a few members of staff compared to my PCSO, who has a huge area to oversee. Or
thank you.
Get into the wrong end of the stick here, I don't know.
No, thanks, Caroline. I think that's really important. I think Craig addressed that community safety is in the social services scrutiny committee, and maybe that's something that we can kind of try and weave into that there if we have a chat, and maybe it would be worthwhile you reaching out as well, just your personal experience, to the chair, and see if that also encourages them to take that up in that scrutiny committee. And obviously, Sonia, is Charlotte the chair of the social services? Yes. And you can speak to her as well, and maybe we can all work together and try and highlight this as an issue. But I think in this specific committee, I'm not sure if that's something within our control or remit, really.
What we can do here is we can, obviously we can speak to the head of service in that area and the manager of that team, obviously highlighting one of the points that Councillor Lewis just mentioned, obviously as part of that consideration as well. So we'll take that away as an action point, and we'll put that to them so they can then consider it at the same time, because if they have in these sort of member seminars and they have been poorly attended for that particular one, are there alternatives they can look at as part of any engagement or outreach? So we'll see what could be possible in that front as well.
Perfect, thank you very much. Caroline, are you happy with that?
Oh, that's lovely. I hope you don't mind me bringing that up in this.
Not at all. That's the point of it. Councillor Harvey, please. You're on mute.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'd like to ask Craig, I obviously work for South Wales Police. I didn't envisage this discussion. Should I declare an interest on this item? It's not.
You've got it down as a personal interest, Councillor Harvey. It's always been recorded, obviously, when you've had police matters coming up, but it's got no connection ultimately to your, I know, to your day-to-day work, but we'll just record it as a personal interest for you.
Okay, thank you. And obviously, the other point is, if anybody's being threatened, got somebody at their door threatening them, and phone 999, don't wait to make contact with the PCSO. And if anybody's worried about their home security, then, arrangements could be made for somebody to call and see them and check the security of somebody's home, if they've been threatened and concerned. Police, got crime reduction tactical advisors who could call and have a look at people's security for them if people are, or councillors are concerned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Sonia.
I just wanted to, I'm just concerned that you've got to go social services, go through the community safety team, seems, a lot of process there. Is there nothing that this committee can do on its own right? I mean, having done that workshop, looking after the safety of councillors, can the chair of this committee write to the inspector, write to the commissioner of police, is that appropriate?
It can be within the context, ultimately, of member safety and member issues, which is what the remit of Democratic Services Committee obviously have. I suppose the question you have to ask yourselves is the issue that you're looking at here more wide-ranging than the point regarding member safety, because that will be the main focus of what we're here ultimately today to discuss. So whilst we can write to South Wales Police, obviously, to focus on the PCSO details in respect of this particular context, if you're looking at a more wider ranging discussion on PCSO's community safety in general, that would sit more within the function of the Social Services Scrutiny Committee. So it ultimately comes down to what you want to achieve as a result of this conversation. We can make the approach directly in respect of members, but if you want that wider ranging discussion, it might be better for that to be considered in the Social Services Scrutiny Committee.
Would it be possible to do both?
Yes, absolutely.
And for this committee, for the chair of this committee, to write in relation to member safety and indicate that we're aware it's a wider issue and are taking that forward through the appropriate means.
Absolutely fine, no problem at all.
I think that's a good idea.
Can I make that proposal then?
You can indeed. Absolutely fine.
Yeah. Do we need to go through a certain process to agree that?
I'm happy, Chair. If it's a consensus, everyone is happy with that general approach and nobody has any objection, we'll just take that away as an action point.
Brilliant. Is everyone happy with that? Yeah, great. So the recommendation is listed on page 23 of the agenda pack. Can I please have a proposer and a seconder? I'm happy to propose.
Our proposal second, whichever you wish.
Thank you very much. Can members please indicate if they wish to abstain?
I can see no abstentions, Chair.
Members, if you do not indicate to the contrary, then I will take it that this recommendation is approved.
Chair, I can see no indications to the contrary, so this recommendation is approved.
Brilliant, thank you. And thanks everyone for a good discussion. I think that was really worthwhile. So agenda item 5, this report is here for decision and is on pages 33 to 37 of the agenda pack. Do members have any questions for officers? If no one does, I've just got a statement. I think this is actually really worthwhile, extending this to members, especially in lieu of, the discussion we've literally just had, where abuse and harassment is on the rise for elected members. I know at the start of the year myself personally, I went for a bit of a tricky time, and through my other employer, I was fortunate enough to have some counselling sessions, and it's just quite handy to have someone who is objective and a trained professional to talk you through things, tell you not nuts, or just to rationalise some other aspects of life, because it is all encompassing being an elected official, and it does weigh on not just your professional life, but your personal life as well, and all other aspects there. So I think we were updated this morning, it's £57.50 for 6 months, but in the report for £120.60 annually, that's really not bad considering the pressures of all members of society, and this probably should. I don't think I've ever heard of anyone coming out of counselling in the bad way. So I think, this is very welcome from my perspective for all members. And if they feel the need to reach out to someone, I would strongly recommend them to do so. So that's just from myself, and I think it's very good value for money, actually, because if you're good sound in your mental capacity, you're going to make better decisions, and we need 60 councillors with good mental capacity to make good decisions for the local authorities. So yeah, can't question this at all. Has anyone else got any questions or any comments they'd like to raise on this item? Sonia, go on, sorry.
Just to say, I'd like to thank officers for moving extremely rapidly following an initial discussion on this.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sonia. And yes, thanks, officers. Go on, Craig.
Yeah, very briefly, just to explain to members now what happens next. So as you said, I erred on the side of caution by putting in the full amount of the £120 in the report, but after we published, they came back and told me it would be £57.50 for 6 months, and next year then it will be £75 for the full sum. So a very good sum that's been put forward there. What will happen next is the Dem Services team now will reach out to all members and will send you a copy of the access, the way in which you can be able to access this facility. You'll be given a sort of a login code and password as well for you to go onto the online elements, and there will be little cards that will be available for members as well, so they can carry it around with them. So we'll send out all the details now in the coming days as to how you get about accessing this service, and hopefully it will then be of use to members. Just to emphasise as well, it's purely absolutely confidential, so the information that you relay during those calls doesn't get reported back ultimately to any officer within the council. It's a totally independent service that will run for you to access at your own leisure. You don't have to have the consent of any officer to be able to access the same. You have total control in the way in which you do it. All you have to do when you go on to the call is say you are a member within Neath Talbot Council, and it will be governed appropriately. So we will get some statistics back as to how many members may have access to those particular services, albeit in an anonymised fashion. So we will bring some future reports back to the Democratic Services Committee so people can see that the service has been used, so if there's any other sort of developments in its operation at all.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Craig. The recommendation is listed on page 36 of the agenda. Yeah, sure. Actually, good point. Has anyone online got any questions just following up on Craig's? No, great. Okay, great. So the recommendation are listed on page 36 of the agenda pack. Can I please have a proposer and a seconder?
Proposed, Chair.
Thanks, Bob.
Second, Chair.
Thanks, Sonia. Can members please indicate if they wish to abstain?
I can see no abstentions, Chair.
Perfect, thanks, Pam. Members, if you do not indicate to the contrary, then I will take it that this recommendation is approved.
I can see no indications to the contrary, so this recommendation is approved.
Thank you very much. Agenda item 6. This item is here for noting. It's the forward work programme. Do members have anything further to add? Nope. Brilliant. Agenda item 7, urgent items. I have no urgent items, and that brings us to a close of today's meeting. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending. Safe journeys home to those coming in person, and nice to see you guys online.
Thank you.
Right.
Bye.